Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about Hellraiser, the 1987 horror film written and directed by Clive Barker, starring Andrew Robinson, Claire Higgins and Ashley Lawrence. And I'd like to go through this famous film, exploring how the plot's put together as well as some of the themes that crop up in it. I suppose if you could sum up this film, it would be about a damned soul's escape from hell and his eventual recapture. The film is in 3 acts with a brief introduction and coda, and we begin with this character called Frank Cotton. Frank seems to be in some Middle Eastern country perhaps, and he's bought this mysterious looking and intriguing looking box, this small cube, looks like a puzzle box. And then we see him perform this ritual surrounded by candles. He manages to open the box, but then he is torn apart by these hooks which spring from the box attached to chains, and then he's pulled to pieces. We then see these mysterious and hideous looking figures walking about his remains, and one of them, whom is identified by fans of the film as Pinhead, manages to slide the box back to its original configuration. We're then into Act 1, and the focus switches to this house in England, and Larry Cotton and Julia Cotton are moving into this house. Larry is actually Frank's brother, Frank, who we've just met in the introduction. And Larry has realised that Frank has been living in this house because of the squalor the house is in. There's rotting food and there's this filthy mattress. Upstairs, the house seems to be filled with this religious stroke occult paraphernalia. But then, through some flashbacks, we realise actually that Julia, Larry's wife, has had an affair with Frank, Larry's brother, and she seems to still harbour some strong feelings towards Frank. We're also introduced to Kirsty, Larry's daughter. She doesn't seem to be too fond of Julia, Larry's wife, but she's prepared to get along with them just to keep the peace. Now this act really is about the reanimation of Frank, Larry's brother. And Larry cuts his hand while he's moving a mattress on this nail. He goes upstairs and he bleeds into the floorboards of the attic. And this is where Larry was taken by the Cenobites, these characters, after the box was opened. The blood seeps through the floorboards, and while the room's empty, Frank seems to emerge from the floorboards. He seems to force his way through the cracks, beginning like this mucus-covered, spindly monster, but then he assumes more of a human form, and eventually Julia finds him. She realises it's Frank, and after her initial shock and after much persuasion, she decides to help Frank. Frank needs blood, human blood preferably, in order for him to come back to the land of the living fully, and to escape the clutches of the Cenobites who have been holding him prisoner in hell. Now, also in Act 1, we meet Kirsty's boyfriend Steve. We've noticed this tramp with these rather piercing eyes. He'll become more noticeable in the 2nd act. Now, Act 2 is all about Frank's victims. Julia goes to these bars, picks up these men, brings them back to the house, to the attic, where she attacks them with a hammer, and then Frank kills them, drains them of their blood, so that he can be clothed in flesh. and eventually brought back to the land of the living fully. And we realise the hold Frank has over Julia. This control where she's just going killing innocent people for his sake. Frank also tells Julia in this act about the Cenobites, these frightening figures who seem to have lured Frank with this box, and then after he'd opened the box, pulled him through into the depths of hell. Frank explains that he's escaped from them, but they'll be after him. And then we also realise that Frank would quite like his brother's blood, but Julia is initially wary of this and tries to protect her husband from Frank. In the meantime, Kirsty, Larry's daughter, is working in a pet shop, and that homeless man turns up again in the pet shop and starts eating locusts. And then this guy goes, who is this strange character? Then after talking to her father, Kirsty goes and sees if she can build on a relationship with Julia. When she arrives at the house, she sees Julia bring in this strange man. She hears screams, and Kirsty goes up to the attic and she encounters Frank, who tries to kill Kirsty. Kirsty manages to escape from his clutches, just before doing so, picking up the box and throwing it through the window, much to Frank's alarm. Kirsty then runs through the streets with clutching this box before she collapses. And that brings us to the last act, Act 3, where Frank is ultimately caught by the Cenobites and pulled back to hell. And at the beginning of this act, Kirsty is in a hospital. She's taken there because she's found collapsed on the street, clutching the box. Kirsty, in this ward, starts fiddling about with the box, and she seems to be open to a new dimension through the hospital wall. She goes into this corridor of hell itself, and she's chased by this creature. She escapes, but then she encounters the Cenobites. And of course, Pinhead is the one who speaks to her. And the Cenobites want her blood. But just before they manage to take her back with them to hell, she manages to buy some time by saying that she knows where Frank is, who's escaped their clutches. They seem to go along with this for the time being, so then Kirsty goes back to the house. Now Kirsty comes to the house and she's confronted by her father, but something's not quite right, and it transpires that it's not her father at all. It's Frank who's taken her father, Larry's skin. Then she realises that it actually is Frank, not her dad. And Frank chases her. And eventually Frank catches her. Kirsty gives him the slip, but then Frank kills Julia. He says it's nothing personal. He takes her blood, and Julia then is taken by the Cenobites. Yes, the Cenobites have arrived at the house. They're looking for Frank. Eventually the Cenobites catch Frank in Larry's skin. They hook him with those chains, pull him to pieces, and Frank is gone. But the Cenobites still want Kirsty. Her boyfriend Steve turns up, and Kirsty manages to escape from the Cenobites by gradually putting the pieces of the box back in their proper position, thus sending the Cenobites back to hell. As the house crashes around them, Kirsty and Steve, her boyfriend, manages to escape from the house, and Kirsty throws this box into a fire. But then we see the derelict character again, this homeless character, and he walks into the flames of this fire, picks up the box, is completely consumed by fire, but then he is turned into this winged, spectral, demonic figure. And we realise that perhaps this is Satan himself, and he flies off with the box. And then right at the end of the film, we see we're back to where we began. The box is on a table in this hot Middle Eastern looking country with this guy, and we have a new victim who's about to take the box. So what are we to make of Hellraiser? Well, it's a fantastic horror film. It really is scary, it's well written, it's well paced. The Cenobites, particularly Pinhead, are unforgettable villains, very memorable. Frank is a really nasty piece of work as well, and the way he comes back to life, the effects are great, and it's a very entertaining film as well. It's one of those horror films you can watch time and time again. The whole idea of this box is intriguing. What is it? The Cenobites are intriguing, and it's no surprise that there have been many sequels based on Clive Barker's writing. The themes it raises, I guess, are sadomasochism. There's a lot of the boundaries between pleasure and pain seem to be rather blurred in this film. Right at the end, when Frank is being torn apart again, he seems to be enjoying it in an almost sexual way. The film talks a lot about how there's a whole hidden dimension in existence which we're not really aware of, that of kind of spiritual evil. I suppose the central image of the film is that of the haunted house, which of course is centuries old as a horror trope, but it's reinvented here in quite an interesting way. I guess the only confusing thing about the film is the accents. It seems to be very much set in England, in London, but the people seem to be more American than English, so that's a bit unusual. But ultimately, Hellraiser is a fantastic horror film, and certainly one of the best horror films out there. Thank you for watching. Please check out the brief slideshow explaining the themes and the structure. Bye.